Today's guest is Mr. Tom Ferry, the founder and CEO of Tom Ferry International. Tom is a legend in real estate circles, coaching thousands of agents with hundreds of coaches working for him at Tom Ferry International. The man puts on an incredible event every year called Success Summit. I think he's expecting over 8,000 people in person in Dallas this summer and 20,000 or so that come in virtually. But that's just a glimpse at Tom today. His story is phenomenal. And then in this episode of Powerhouse, we hear about Tom's origins in the real estate coaching industry, some of his successes, some of his failures. We talk about the current real estate market and the real estate agents and brokerage leaders that are winning and what they're doing, the tactics, the mindset, the growth mentality that is helping people actually drive forward and what's been a pretty challenging real estate market. We also talk about Real Trends Verified, which is our real estate agent and brokerage identification and ranking program. Tomorrow in the Wall Street Journal Mansion section, they're going to be the Real Trends Verified rankings of the top agents in the US. So look out for that in the Wall Street Journal tomorrow. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode with my friend and fellow Dallas executive, Mr. Tom Ferry. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back for another episode of Powerhouse, and I'm thrilled to welcome one of my industry friends and fellow Dallas executives, Mr. Tom Ferry. Tom, welcome to Powerhouse.
Hey, Clayton, thanks so much for having me. Good to be in Dallas too, my friend.
I know, it's a shame we're doing this remote, but it works pretty well remote. And we both had like super productive days because of it. So I'll take it. All right. So Tom, last time you and I were on a podcast together, I think was in your office, and you were interviewing Sarah Wheeler and I and talking housing industry trends and what she sees and knows as an editor for HousingWire. But we're going to take a different angle today. We're going to talk about you, talk about your business, and then we'll talk about real estate and some innovation stuff later in the conversation. But I want to kick off learning more about Tom Ferry as an entrepreneur. And I know the real estate audience has heard your story. A lot of the folks in real estate, you're a household name, but our audience for Powerhouse includes mortgage and title and executives across the industry. So I want to bring some context to who you are as an entrepreneur in the business that you've built. So Tom Ferry International, where'd you get started?
Well, so I barely got out of 5 high schools, graduated with a GED, was kicked out of both parents' homes. You could probably imagine why I was kicked out. It could have been the early days of my entrepreneurial endeavors, throwing parties and having way too much fun. But I had a realization when I was around 18 years old. And Clayton, I was working at a grocery store from midnight to 9 because that's when they would let guys like me with like purple mohawks, do their job. And a friend of mine had passed away recently, and it was sort of a surreal experience. He was a young guy. It made me actually think about time and maybe the direction I was going in my life. And literally fast forward a few days later, my dad walks into the grocery store and probably sent there by my stepmom to, pick up milk and eggs, that kind of thing. We hadn't talked in probably a year and a half. And I had this moment. I saw him, and he was in this beautiful, what I now would probably think of as maybe an Armani suit. He probably just landed from the East Coast. He was probably 5 cities in 5 days that week. And as he, passing through the aisles, I saw him and I ran over to the appropriate aisle, walked right up to him. And again, I've got like a, punk rock t-shirt on, earrings, purple hair. So just picture, you got a baby, all of a sudden, Dad, I want to run your company. And he looked at me and he was like, hey, when the drugs wear off, come back and talk to me. And he just turned the card around and walked away. Well, as the story goes, I waited 5 or 6 hours and literally the next day showed up with the best outfit I could put on and sat in front of him and said, hey, before I got here, I actually thought about what I think at 18, what it would take to be the president of your company. And I wrote down things like, learn the accounting department, understand shipping and receiving, and then eventually go into sales and maybe take over marketing. And then magically you would make me the president. And he chuckled and said, okay, what do you earn now? And I remember telling him how much. He offered me less, but he offered me an opportunity. He said, I'll show you the ropes. I'll teach you the business. You'll learn the customers. You'll learn, the industry, and we might just have a play at this. And literally that was 33 years ago. So, I owe so much to my pops who, is a legend in the industry, turned 79 coming up in just a few weeks, and has poured 50 years of his life into the title industry, the mortgage industry, the real estate industry around the world. And then from there, he just gave me a lot of opportunity. I would come to him and say, should we start a new product line? And, you see this all day long as a CEO, like is this a product or is this a whole separate business? And in 8 different cases, he said, I think that's a whole separate business. Why don't you take that on? Why don't you see if you can run with that? Why don't you see if you can turn that into something and build up a couple new executives or a couple new managers, or at least a project manager, to see if we can stand this up. So in short order, not only did I get a chance to do all those things that I mentioned, and 9 years in, was given the opportunity to be the president of the company. We grew this little business from, back then, like a little $3 million, family business, speaking business, selling books and tapes in the back of the room, to by the time that I left, 14 and a half years into it, we were doing sub $50 million a year in revenue, and we owned like 8 different businesses together. So I'm very blessed. I'm very blessed because not many people get an opportunity the way I got it. And I would say, with humility, I took full advantage of helping my family business.
That's phenomenal. So as you entered the family business at, around 3 million in annual revenue, was there a management team in place with other folks that you had to step in and earn their trust as you navigated into the business as the son of Mike Ferry?
Over the 3 years as we started to grow in the very beginning, no, the family business was literally dad, stepmom Pua, who I think you met, one of my summits,
Yep.
Another legend, former title rep, and then helped him grow that business. But over time, he was smart. He started grabbing other executives that he knew, whether it was someone like Greg Allard, who became my first sales manager, or Bill Hart, who I know legendary coach and trainer in the mortgage space. He would bring these people in, and I think I was always smart enough to understand I was the youngest guy in the room. I had a lot to learn from everybody. I always asked a lot of questions. I'm just that guy. And I don't know if this is my mom, my dad, one of my stepmoms, said with, not disrespectful, but, a couple stepmoms, that you learn, if you just figure out who is the apex predator in the room and how can I learn from that person? How can I serve that person? Even today, Clayton, my younger son is a real estate agent. My older son just went to work for F&F in California. And he's like, any advice, first week on the job? I'm like, you know who all the players are because they're friends of mine. I said, just every day, don't be sitting at your desk. Ask, how can I help? What do you need? And whether they need you to go get a coffee, go get their car full of gas, or drop some flyers off, or whatever it may be. The answer is, yes, sir. How can I help? You got it. And I think I've taken that mindset, and that's why it made it easier for me to power up the person in front of me. Kind of 50 laws of power. If you're 48 laws of power, if you read that book, I read that much later on. Serve the one in charge. It's always helped me.
So what did you figure out was your superpower in those early days of your career? So your dad's the man on stage, the speaker, 5 cities, 5 days. And today that's you. You're like the guy in front. But before you were the guy in front, what business skills or superpowers did you develop as you helped build the business that was the speaking business and the 8 offshoot businesses that you developed in your 14 years working with your dad?
I would chunk it specifically into a client first sales and marketing approach, right? What are the fundamental problems that real estate agents are facing? How can we construct repeatable solutions for them and then deliver that in a cost-effective way to them, through sales channels, through marketing, through distribution? I think that's the thing. Even in the early days when it was my brother and myself and my dad all speaking, my brother was doing a lot of sales training, NLP. I was kind of doing, being a more practical business person, time management, business systems, orchestration, building your team. And then my dad was just being the legend. Even then, I loved producing the show. I love being behind the scenes. I love all the research in the beginning to figure out, okay, we've got, X number of people inside the room, Y fall in this bucket, Z fall in this bucket, A fall in this bucket. How do we then orchestrate content that's meaningful to all? How do I get them to become a community and connect in some way, shape, or form? Because again, maybe it's because I went to too many high schools and didn't go to college. So maybe I lacked community as I think about it. So I wanted community. I wanted people to, every time they came to an event, want to share their best practices, want to, Clayton, I haven't seen you in a year. How you doing, man? Remember the details of these people around you. And, later on in life, you realize, oh my goodness, that had a massive impact on a lot of people. Just when you're a killer in your marketplace, it can be lonely. So coming to a place where there's a bunch of other, for the person listening, killer apex predator, highly successful real estate team leader, loan officer, right? Like if you're doing $300 a month, you're a killer, right? Giving them an environment where they felt safe to idea share and connect and put their hair down. Like I would say that's probably my secondary superpower.
So I think it's funny hearing like the beginning of your story and like throwing parties as a kid. And like, then now I look at you here in Dallas throwing 10,000 person events down at the convention center. So it's like, feel like some of those origin skills, that desire to bring people together as a scrappy entrepreneur has translated to the business that you lead today. But
I'm literally thinking about like $2 to get in with 2 bands and a keg, right? That was the early days.
I got to say, I think Success Summit this year needs a keg.
I could think of a couple brand conventions I've been to where there used to be significant bars back there. And I was thinking, okay, don't go near that before your speech.
We just got done hosting the Gathering, our big event in Scottsdale. And when we're clearing out like all like the bills on the back end after the event, the event programming lead at the resort said like, yeah, it's such a unique group you guys brought to our venue. I've never seen more executives have more meetings. They were just huddled off everywhere. Like there's an unlocked door, there's people in there having a meeting. I was like, all right, that's good. And also she's like, you guys had a lot of open bars, but I've never seen a group spend more money at the hotel bar. And I was like, oh, wow. So the mortgage and real estate audience, they come for the drinks.
I would also say, looking at the data from last year, 2023, spending a lot of time recently with a couple of the executives at Fidelity, F&F, the parent company, the first half of this year so far has been so much better than last year. And even though, depending upon, the numbers you look at, whether we're up a couple 100,000 transactions or a little bit more, Clayton, did we just get used to it? Or have the best just continue to rise to the occasion? Like there's a lot of good to talk about this year. And I know as I say that, someone's going to hate on me and say, it's really hard. I get it. It's just not as hard as 2023 coming off the high of 2021. You with me? That's what I mean.
Tom, I have an open tab in my browser right now of an investor letter that I need to finish and send out when we're done recording today. And so I have a group of investors that backed me to buy HousingWire back in 2016. And, we're owned this company for 8 years. A lot of them, some of them are involved with the business, others like not so much. So like have to like start from like the beginning on like how the business is performing. And so I'm writing this investor letter talking about some of the cyclicality of the housing industry, some of the impacts that it's seen over the last 2 years. And I'm writing this out and like doing the math in my head. It's like, wow, from 2021 to 2022, mortgage origination volume dropped by 40%. And then again, from 22 to 23, 40% again. And like, that's just like, it's an insane wave that like the folks that you serve in the real estate ecosystem, the folks we serve in mortgage and real estate, they've ridden an insane wave. You and I have been right there with them though. We are operating businesses in this industry, and like, we're more successful when the industry is successful. I think that's pretty clear.
If I can interrupt, my only caveat would be, you're of course, all boats rise, right? And yet we're seeing such demand now with content, with events, and you see it, right? As someone putting out good information every single day, important information every single day. I think people's awareness to knowledge is power is far greater in an environment like this. And I can remember it because having started my business in 2004 and going right into 2007, 8, 9, 10, it was the same thing. It was the
That's
same
the
exact
next
thing.
paragraph of my investor letter. Is there's like with change comes demand for information and knowledge, and I think you nailed the language there. I mean, ultimately, our industry, we all like to think we're selling money or selling houses, but ultimately we're selling knowledge. And like, that's where I think this industry has, in some ways lost its way and forgetting how to demonstrate and communicate that we're selling knowledge, not just like providing a pure service. Yeah. All right. So 14 years in with your dad, running that business, 8 offshoot businesses, and your entrepreneurial nature kicks into overdrive. What happens next?
So I remember sitting down with a mentor of mine, guy used to run the Irvine company in Southern California, who was my dad's first boss and my first mentor at 18. And I said, I think I'm going to leave and start my own deal. And again, my intention was not to leave. My intention was, can I buy half the business? Can I, can we make this thing work? And there was a lot of confusion in the marketplace, a lot of storytelling in the marketplace. At the end of the day, my dad is my dad. I love him with all my heart. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. The hardest thing I'd ever done. I felt like, again, I've been married for 33 years. I've never been divorced. 31 years together with my wife for 33. I've never been divorced, and I don't know what that experience would be like. The closest thing would be leaving, where all my siblings worked. We're 160 employees. I was the president of the company. They all were, indirectly or directly reported to me, all of our business coaches, and to walk from that on a Tuesday. And I have to tell you, it was one of the greatest decisions I ever made. And like many, the person listening, if you're a founder, you could just kill yourself for weeks thinking about all the different what ifs and the scenarios. And if I do it, and Clayton, and what happens? And oh my goodness, is my wife going to miss me? Is she going to leave me over this? And then you make the decision. The moment you do, you're like, all right, this is what we have to do. And I remember leaving my house, saying to my wife, hey, I'm going to go meet with Bill, and we're going to talk about how to start this thing. And I came home with 11 employees, $51,000 a month in burn. And literally in a matter of 9 hours, came home and said, all right, honey, we're starting tomorrow. I got 11 people. I just leased some space. And she was like, wait a minute. Like, I thought we were going to do this in the garage. And I was like, yeah, that's where the cars go, sweetheart. Like, let's go. And my wife is a finance major, brilliant. Like, she's the official and unofficial at times CFO of the company. She was like, okay, so what do we need to do in year one to try and get back to at least break even? And we laid out our plan, and we actually ended up laying out a 10-year plan at that time. And, we were able to go, call it, $2 million in revenue, $6 million in revenue, $10 million in revenue in 3 years. And I didn't know any better. I didn't know if that was good or bad, but think about that I've invested in 115 startups now. So I know, what we were able to do was good, right? Was good in comparison to many. I didn't raise any capital. I just started.
Yeah, no, there's businesses that raise money and don't get past that, that $3 million ARR level. That seems to be kind of the make or break point for if you actually have product market fit.
Yes. Yeah. Now, I didn't make any money.
Yeah.
But at least we very quickly figured out there's some unique problems that we know we can solve. It was interesting because at the time, Steve, right, the original Wall Street Journal top 100.
Yep.
At the time, a dozen or so of those people were all my personal clients. And when I spent, a little time on vacation prior to starting, one of the things I wrote down was, let's synthesize what do all these men and women have in common? What's the difference between, say, John McMonagle and Sandy Andrew, right? I think John was number 1 and Sandy was number 100 that year on the list. And what I started looking at was every single one of them, they operate their business with a certain mindset, right? It's very, very consumer centric, very do the right thing. Like, they have the right values. But what was interesting is at the time in the industry, there was, the sort of Mike Ferry way, like make more phone calls, knock on doors, cold call, right? Everything else is stupid. There was the Brian Buffini, Joe Stump, by referral only. Why would you ever want to pick up the phone? La, la, la. There was fading out at the time was Hobbs and Herder, dating myself for some of my veteran friends out there. Shout out to Don Hobbs and Greg Herder, right? Those guys were like all branding, all marketing. And then when I looked at all my clients, Clayton, they were all doing all three and always asking themselves, what's next? See, I was very blessed in the very beginning. Jay Abraham, who's been a longtime mentor and today a great friend, he instilled in me back in the early 90s, every 18 months, you've got to enter a new market, you've got to bring out a new product, or you've got to reinvent something to maintain relevancy in the market. Now, if we don't say anything else, and every founder, every business owner, just take that piece of advice from a guy that has done billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars in sales across 1,000 different industries. He would say to me over and over again, every 18 months, you got to do something new. You got to do something fresh because you lose steam. As a founder, you lose steam and your team loses steam and your clients, worst of all, they lose steam. And if your clients lose steam, your business is done. So starting out early, I was able to synthesize some messaging that made sense. And then quite honestly, I just worked my face off. I remember walking to my wife and saying, all right, baby, we're going from this kind of lifestyle, being a president of a company and, family business, all the advantages, to no revenue, nothing but cost. Here's the deal. I'm going to be working 7 days a week. Like every founder knows what I'm talking about, right? It's just 7 days a week until we get to a point where we can breathe and you as my CFO are comfortable with the finances that we can now say, okay, how do I carve off Sundays?
So you're demonstrating some of the principles of a growth mindset, and you're talking about a growth mindset for the real estate clients that you coach. So it sticks out to me that, from 3 to 5 to 10 million in revenue, you said we're still not making any money. And I know you can operate this business model and make money at 10. So that meant that you were reinvesting fast and hiring potentially ahead of business demand, but creating opportunity, creating demand in the market. And when you talk about being able to do outbound calling, marketing and brand, referral all simultaneously, you got to have an intense growth mindset and the ability to juggle like multiple KPIs at once. So how do you think about like staying organized, building with rigor and not like overspending into an opportunity? Like, how do you think about that for yourself? Then we can kind of apply that to the real estate industry.
I still do. God bless my dad. Like, the thing that he taught me that I will always be grateful for is work ethic. So get this, when we started the business, I was like, okay, I've got some coaches. We did back then, we'd called a webinar back then. It was like, call the 800 number, listen on a call for like an hour.
14 digits. You know what I mean?
Like, exactly, like $80 a minute. So we launched, and then I'm like, we need to do an event. So in the very beginning, I said to my wife, hey, I've been traveling 26 weeks a year. There is enough people and I have enough relationships between, I'm going to date myself here, like shout out to David Romero, Century 21 in Orange County in San Diego, to Steve Games, Santa Barbara down to San Diego, Gino Bafari, Northern California, in Taro. I was able to say, could I serve these 3 CEOs and just do regional events? I'll go do office meetings. So the president, co-founder of the company, Steve Almonte, would literally book 3 sales meetings a day. I would do like a 9 o'clock, I'd do like a noon, and then maybe like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And my rule was, as long as I didn't have to drive, more than like 3 hours north or east, or, couldn't go west because of the ocean, as long as I didn't have to do that, like it was okay. As long as I can map out, hit all those spots. Well, I did that for like 2.5 years. 2.5 years, pretty much consistently 4 days a week. Kind of learned Fridays were not always that great. But if it was Friday and I was leaving Orange County and I was going to the high desert, for a great title partner who was going to put 200 people inside the room, I was going to go. And the number of meetings that I did in the beginning, and I always liken this for like when one of my clients says, hey, how would you get started if you were new? I'm like, I would do open houses 7 days a week, 7 to 8 hours a day. And when you went to lunch, go knock on 3 doors to the right, 3 doors to the left, talk to 5 people in the coffee shop, wear your company name badge. That's what I was doing. I was literally going out going, value, 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 value. Hey, would you like more? Come to this event. Like that's how we built and scaled that fast.
So when you're able to, when you have that superpower of being able to go out and do, 3 in-person presentations a day, or if you put it in agent speak, like do 7 open houses every day of the week. Who do you put around you to create business success out of that? Like you are like the sales guy, you create opportunities. So like, who did you put around you in those like early years to make sure that actually turned into execution and revenue and happy clients?
Mary Jett, who happens to be the president of one of my companies today, who, was a title rep, was an early coach at Mike Ferry, became the #1 coach in my company.
Yeah.
Mary was in charge of the back end. Steve Almonte, who was my co-founder, he was the VP of sales at my dad's company. So he had left sort of prior to me leaving. He ran sales. Who was doing my marketing? I can see him, the Australian guy. He's going to be super mad if he listens to this, but you know who you are. Jandro was doing some basic accounting. I had McGovern, Ryan Jono, a third. I mean, I basically just, in one day, hired like 11 people and started. And the whole game was, I knew as a founder, my superpower was go be with clients. go deliver value, go create revenue, and attempted to do nothing else. So I hired around me, which is why I personally didn't make any money, but I made sure that the people around me were doing all the things that had to be done. And it was interesting, like early on, Clayton, knowing that probably needed to start building a database. So invested early, and I couldn't even tell you, it was like Telemagic or some funny CRM from, 21 years ago, but knew I needed someone that could run the database, right? I had my my brother-in-law's wife, Olga, who was answering the phone, very heavy Russian accent. So that lasted like 3 days. Hello there, this is Olga. What do you want? Like that didn't work. But I said to her, hey, I need all these business cards added into the database. She was smart enough to figure out there was a way that we could FedEx them to somebody in Vietnam and get them done for like 2 cents a card. All we had to do was FedEx and FedEx. So she was able to never type, but get it done. Like it was scrappy and crazy. And long before all these sort of unbelievable technological resources that are available for us today, it was just 7 days a week, grind it out, prioritize, learn to cut, only focus on the things that really mattered. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't just sell. You got to sell, serve. It was all of that. And to be clear, and we made every mistake you can imagine. You know what I mean? Like, don't hear me and think I had it all going on. There's there's a big difference between running someone else's company and managing their checkbook and having it be your own checkbook.
Yep. Especially when a lot of the mistakes had already been made when you step in to run somebody else's business. So you'll make your own,
and you just don't know. Like no regrets. I mean, sending out, a gazillion direct mail pieces and getting no response, like fax us back your order, that kind of nut, like, and literally wasting tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, being late, I would say, to YouTube by a year, I'm still mad about. Not hiring a videographer early enough. I was like on my flip video camera by myself trying to figure it out, like some of those things, but it all worked out, but I can look back and actually get more upset than I probably should right now.
Okay. So let's fast forward, Tom. Tell us about the coaching business today. Who are you coaching? Give us a glimpse.
Yeah. Like personally, I get to work with some pretty extraordinary people. Gino Bafari is pretty notable in the industry. He's been a client and a friend for going on 3 decades. He's been through a lot this year, as many other CEOs have. Big shout out to Matt Rand, who, is just a fantastic CEO. I was super blessed to work with his mom and then his brother Greg and Joe, and then Matt when he took over. I was able, been working with them, I guess, collectively probably 2 decades. I could literally go through my entire client list. It would be crazy because I'm super blessed. Today, what I'll tell you is we have 237 business coaches operating right now, and I want to say 4 countries. There may be effects. I know one's about to move to the UK. We have clients in 29 countries, which is crazy. It's a very rewarding business. And Clayton, I remember being in San Francisco at the Fairmont in Nob Hill and watching my dad say to this audience of great agents, if I called you once a week and just said, do your job, what went right, what went wrong, how can I help, what are you working on? Let's create a little accountability. That was the moment. That sparked everything. We were in Palm Desert that weekend and literally created what we would now think of as coaching in the real estate industry. Big shout out to myself, my brother Matthew, my wife was there. I think his wife Diane, my dad, his assistant Kathy, who kind of orchestrated a lot of the stuff. Big shout out to longtime coach friend Steve Scholl. Steve was in the room, and we all just kind of said, "What would it look like? How would we orchestrate it? How would we do this?" And you go from there to, I would say, 2016, and there was almost zero innovation. It was literally open up your folder, get on the phone. Maybe you had a headset, maybe you were speakerphone, maybe you used an 800 line. We went from obviously like faxing information to emailing, but that it didn't really feel like a lot of innovation. But I remember in 2016 thinking to myself, I am like 50,000 hours into coaching, and my mentor told me every 18 months you have to innovate. And I'd heard about this company, Zoom, and I'm like, I'm going to look into that. And took all my coaches, put them through a training called How to Get Camera Ready. And within like a month of that, we became the first and only coaching company to do 100% of all of our calls via Zoom. And that was a great differentiator for a long time. Then the pandemic hit, that one was gone. So, now it's AI, it's providing, 2013, we launched team coaching in the space, and we're sort of first in the marketplace to say there's multiple different types of teams that you can coach. And it was great because it was like title teams, mortgage teams, real estate teams, teamerages, brokers that were operating as a team, people that wanted to get into the space, people that wanted to become better assistants. So it was all of that. I think it's just paying attention to the zeitgeist, like where's it going? And, you see it, you're on the pulse of it every day. I feel like I'm on the pulse of it every day. It's just trying to stay relevant for the customer you're in front of. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So I noticed you use the term business coach. So like, where does coaching like start and stop from like the spectrum of things that a coach might talk about with a client? And I'm guessing that's a broader definition than I'm going to anticipate given the business coach term.
We're not life coaches, but as the CEO of the company, I can tell you that pretty much every week I get a text from one of my coaches saying such and such has cancer. Such and such's son just got an NFL contract. Such and such's son just hit, a walk-off for the Houston Astros. Probably more tragedy than triumph, but I get that like I don't want to say every day, but it feels like it at times every day. So I know as a coach that you and I are working together and you're hitting a wall, right? Something is stopping you, whether it's a process that's blocking you or it's, a glass ceiling, whatever that would be, a mindset shift that needs to occur. You can almost count on it is something from your past that if you don't have the ability to understand it, to have empathy for it, to dissect it, to try and create an alternative to what happened, another point of view. So a lot of coaching it's psychology, man. It's understanding like the blocking and tackling of real estate, like in any business, is not that complicated. And yet, why is it that in 2023, with 1.55 million agents, only 5,238 agents listed more than 45 houses? Think about it. That's the actual stat. 5,238 agents listed more than 45 houses, and about sub 200,000 listed between 5 and 44. And the balance listed, let's just call it 0 to 4. And you and I both know the vast majority was on the 0 spectrum. That is a mindset issue.
Was it like 400 or is it 400 or 500? They got one or more because it drops off pretty fast.
The NAR report, I want to say, I forget which news organization published it, but it was like 49% of all agents last year did 0 or 1.
Yeah.
Right. So these weren't bad people. Maybe their parents were nice to them. Maybe they weren't. Maybe they went to a good college. Maybe they didn't. Like at the end of the day, the blocking and tackling side of this business is everywhere. It's on my channel and 1,000 other coaches and tens of thousands of great sales managers and sales leaders and mentors. That information is everywhere. But why is it that two people go to the same licensing school, join the same brokerage, one kills it and one leaves the business? This is why I took all my coaches through, time life therapy training. We've done a lot of therapeutic method. Not that I want my coaches to be like, lay down and tell me about your mother, right? But we know that there is an aspect of success that if you don't get into the weeds with people on their background, their history, what's stopping them, the consistent patterns, the crazy 8 loops that they get into, if you don't have the ability to address that, how many times could you say to somebody, what are your numbers? And did you make your phone calls? You know what I mean? If they're just not doing it, there's a reason why.
So you have to have the psychology figured out before it gets to the accountability stage. Okay. And then we're from accountability, we talked about like business planning a little bit in the beginning. Like, so do the business coaches go from psychology to accountability to like business practices and like, hey, you're selling X, you should probably spend Y on marketing, or like, how are they, where do you start and stop there?
So I don't want to say that every one of my coaches, if I said our process, it's more, okay, what have you done? And for how long have you done it? And what are the lessons from what you've done and how long you've done it? And then tell me your vision, 1 year, 3 year, 10 years out. What are we building together? What is it we're trying to accomplish? And then what do you see as the most consistent barriers that are holding you back from getting there? And then that's where psychology comes in. Well, Tom, you don't understand. In my market, bias, whatever the bias is. In my market, I'm in New York City. There's, I'm in, Montreal, Canada. I'm in Munich, Germany. You don't understand. Okay, help me understand your biases, your confirmation biases around the way it's done. And then it's, what's going to be, are they internal decision makers? Are they external decision makers? Can I say 7 other people have done it? They're just like you. Why don't you have a conversation with them? Look, they were able to do it. Are they all internal? I don't have to tell you, only you know, because you're the one that's going to decide. There's like 5 meta models of decision making that if you don't understand that, what's the old line? Round hole square peg. You can beat through your truth, and your truth can be true, but if you don't understand the person you're talking to, it doesn't work.
Okay, so you mentioned AI a few minutes ago, and I've heard you talk about AI a few times. I know you were teasing it out on stage last year at Success Summit. You've had some big announcements in the last few months. What role does AI play in the business you're building?
Everything from coach client selection to ensuring success of customers to my content and curriculum team. So we launched Tom AI, I guess it'd be almost a year ago. And it's new software, so it's in beta. The thing that I'll express to everybody is every single person listening should have their own version of AI. And technically you can now with ChatGPT 4. You can create your separate GPTs. That's a whole other thing that, Jason Pantana on my team does a wonderful job explaining. But what if I told you that today, I can go into Tom AI and say, give me the emotional sentiment of my clients in the Northeast. Tell me what the Southeast, what are they talking about the most right now? And that's because, we have an agreement with our clients that every session is recorded inside of Zoom, and we're feeding a percentage of those, not all of them. And by the way, you'll appreciate this. Big shout out to Jackie. Not going to say his last name so nobody can recruit him. Jackie came up with a technology where we actually can turn off personal conversations. Right? So Clayton, I don't want Tom AI full of, Agent X is sleeping with their assistant.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I
or even
partied too hard
conversation about softball. Like people in the Southeast are talking a lot about Little League this week. Not exactly helpful.
Yeah. I care for what matters to my customers, but that's not stuff that I want to feed this super engine of all things real estate professionalism. So I want all that stuff out. So he was able to scrape all the personal conversations, just add a percentage of the business conversations. And you and I both know you don't have to add a lot to start getting insight. But now we call it 3,000, 3,500 daily active users going in and, hey, build me my marketing plan, act like Coach X. I'm in New York City. Here's the biggest problem I'm trying to solve. Here's the methodology I'm going for. The better the prompt, always the better the response. And then the most common thing that Tom AI gets asked afterwards is, do it even better. Give me another example. Give me 5 more variations. And what's happening is, again, you can do all this in ChatGPT. And I want to be very clear. Here's the fundamental difference. Sitting with a buddy of mine who's sitting over there in one of my offices, who's the chief innovation officer and then the chief marketing officer for F&F, working on a project today. He's very mindful of whatever information you upload into ChatGPT, you're giving to everybody. So we put a firewall in between ChatGPT and Tom AI. So whatever we discuss stays here just inside the community. And so if you're building your own GPT, think about that. It is remarkable how much insight we get now. I just spent a week in Jackson Hole, Wyoming with a bunch of my coaches. And so we're like, hey, we're building out the summit for this year. We're expecting 8,000 people, 20,000 people watching live. What would make the most remarkable? Well, look back over the history of all the conversations of Summit. Tell us what they liked and what they didn't like. Do you know what I mean? What are the teams saying? What are the solo agents saying? What are the luxury agents saying? To be able to have that sort of search query at our disposal, man, valuable is an understatement. So sorry, I'm slightly excited about this.
It also means you need really high quality data to your event attendee information needs to be has to be appended with if someone's like a solo agent or a team or luxury. And so like that creates a pretty big like data dependency in the organization, and like the need to start like thinking about this stuff proactively, because you can't go back now and say like, I mean, it'd be very onerous to go back and say, let's start working on the 2018 like Success Summit like user surveys and appending that. I mean, it's heavy.
Right. I look at it like, I liken it to, in the next few years, it'll be my version of Snowflake, right? Like to literally be able to know anytime a client does this, and this, they get a 70% lift in their business. Now, could you imagine to be able to synthesize, and this is stuff that we're always playing with, is, how do you synthesize best practices that won't just work in Santa Monica, California, but they'll also work in San Diego. They'll also work in, New South Wales and Australia, right? And when you start to synthesize those plays and you see it based on the data, and you've got some accuracy around listings taken directly from the MLS or whatever it may be, now you're like, this works. Like, I don't care what you say. This works across all these marketplaces and all these price points. Go. You with me? Like to me, that's going to be a great degree of separation. It already is. It's just going to be on steroids with AI.
So Tom, tomorrow we drop the Real Trends 1,000 rankings in the mansion section of the Wall Street Journal. And one of the trends that we'll publish through Real Trends and HousingWire, and it was evident in the broker rankings that we dropped back in March, is that the stronger getting stronger, the bigger getting bigger, the best agents, the best teams, the best brokerages are consolidating market share and doing more business. So when you talk about AI and you talk about like, hey, these are the 5 things you need to do to like get bigger, it just sounds like it's a tool that is going to help the smartest get stronger, act faster, gain more market share. Like this technology adopted the right way. And like, let's be real, technology adoption of real estate has not always been done the right way, but technology adopted the right way can really could change this really fragmented long tail industry that is real estate, and like concentrate much more volume to the left axis of people who just do more deals.
I think we're already seeing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've been seeing it. I mean, since I got involved with Steve, and the original sort of Real Trends and the America's Best, we saw it even, forget the pandemic because it was such an anomaly. If I go back to 2009, 10, 11, 12, when all of a sudden you really started to see teams and teamerages, right? It was so obvious then, right, that, how do I say it best? The consumer deserves a better quality experience, and those that can scale the experience will continue to serve more customers. Period. End of story. It's brand, it's marketing, it's conversion, it's client satisfaction. So you're seeing it everywhere. And by the way, I just came off a European tour. Guess what's happening throughout Europe? Same exact thing. Same exact thing. Guess what's happening in Australia? I've been going to Australia for like the last 26 years. The biggest conference there, shout out to John McGraw, the ERIC conference. It's the same exact thing. You see the rise of this like true entrepreneurial spirit. They could be a solo agent. They could be an agent with 4 assistants. They could be an agent with 300 people on their team. The best are just getting better and better and better. Now, with all that said, I was super clear just a few years ago, 2019, I said, I think the next big trend is going to be the artisan agent. The artisan agent who necessarily doesn't want, maybe they don't want a team. They don't want to sell 200 homes a year or 300 homes a year, but what they want is their client to have a beautiful experience, a high quality experience, a high touch experience, but not just do 6 deals a year, do 25, 30. And what you're seeing is the use of technology, great access to their CRM. They use their broker's transaction coordinator, right? Like they're orchestrating. And I'm seeing those people in droves. And Clayton, some of them are in their 60s and 70s, and some are in their like 20s and 30s. Like there's no, it doesn't seem to be one demographic or another. It's a absolute care for the client, but dissatisfied with selling 5 or 6 homes a year.
The market is smaller, but it's still so big. And artisan doesn't have to mean like small or micro niche. Like it's knowing your lane. And I'm seeing the same thing in mortgage. I was talking to a mortgage executive who built an incredible brokerage as an individual producer. Like he processed and like worked with his like did everything, did the whole transaction like end to end, and did a lot of volume that way. And if we go back to how we started the conversation and talking about being selling knowledge and not like selling money or selling houses, you can't sell knowledge if you do 1 or 2 transactions a year. It's the reps. It's the success begets success, objects in motion stay in motion, all those things. You got to do deals. You got to have reps to have the knowledge to guide people through transactions in a flawless, seamless way.
100%. So funny. I interviewed David Goggins, who some of your listeners will know. And it was like the 3rd time I interviewed him on my podcast. And I said, hey, David, somebody asked me to ask you, how do I get over my fear of the phone? And if you know David, he like Hector, you'll appreciate it. He says, you should make 300 phone calls a day and you should do it for 300 straight days and you'll be over it. But what was he saying? This is a guy that ran over 8 weekends. He ran 8 100-mile marathons. He's like, I just wanted to see if I could just prove to myself that I could. And to your point, like it's like a consumer today. Like, how do you select a real estate professional? How do you select a real estate professional when you do it once a decade?
So let me tell you, so we've, like you were talking about Steve Murray and partnering years ago, and like how we've been thinking about real trends. And if you're gonna like dish or like not like rankings programs, it's because you're gonna say that it's all about ego and like just trying to show like who makes the most money. But that's not, for us, it's not really it. It's showing like who like is successful enough to do volume and do reps and then help more people discover those agents, teams, and brokerages. And pretty soon, you're starting to see it now. If you go to realtrends.com, like it's no longer like the news and research site it once was. This is a product that helps people identify the top producing agents, teams, and brokerages in the country. It's not about ego. It's not about saying like who's, who gets to say they're the real number one agent. It's about actually demonstrating who has knowledge and who's going to serve the consumer best. I always feel like kind of terrible for like the homeowner who decides to sell their home with like their neighbor, their niece, or somebody who's like done one transaction and has a license. Like, do you really think you're getting the best quality advice out there? Because probably not.
It's sad. And I know, you and I are 100% agreement. And yet I get asked every day on Instagram or Facebook or, X, hey, I'm a brand new agent. What do you recommend? And you know what my typical response is? Pick a mentor, pick a buddy, prospect like crazy, bring them on the appointments, give them the lion's share of the commission. You will learn. Like, so it's the same thing. Because, someone says, well, it's not fair. I got started and I was able to do okay. Yeah, but the number of people that didn't start okay and failed and spent a lot of money in this industry on dues and MLS and business cards, and then flared out of the business, it's tragic. It's actually tragic. So I agree. Consumer deserves the best possible experience. And if you're only going to do something once every decade or once every 7 years, I think about, shout out to my guy, Gary Gold. I bought some land recently in Wyoming, and my next door neighbor, who is the CEO of this company, he has worked with Gary, and he's bought and sold like 12 houses with him. And I literally said, well, how'd you meet Gary? He told me the original time. He super impressed me. And he goes, and I've just used him for the last like 20 years. Like, that's an example of like, Gary's a Beverly Hills guy with an average sales price of probably, I don't know, 4 to 6 million on average. And yet to have a repeat customer use him that many times, refer him over and over again, that's what we want for the industry.
Yeah. And so check this out, Tom. We're going to, on the Real Trends, we're going to be able to help people that are buying in Wyoming or Plano, or wherever they are, like identify the best agents like in that city. So on Real Trends, we're working on city pages. And so right now we rank the top 1.5% of the agents nationally, which means if you're looking at like LA, there's like 100 agents to choose from. But if you're looking at Tyler, Texas, you might not have any. So like we're changing the criteria and like bringing a methodology forward that helps identify the best agents in a market, because we know like, hey, if you live in Tyler, your average transaction size isn't 4 to 6 million, and you're probably not doing 100 transactions a year, but there's still some really powerful, experienced agents there, artisan agents. We'll adopt your word.
You and I talked about this at lunch many years ago. So congratulations. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it's coming to fruition. We're gonna start opening nominations after the 1,000 drops in this coming week. So in June we'll be able to have agents drop their data for city rankings.
Hey, you know what I would love to see? I would love to see a 10-year case study of the America's Best and the 1,000, agents versus teams, volume versus transaction, 10-year study of their production. How many times did they come on and off the list?
Tracy Velt, Mike Simonson, listen to this. This is the next research project.
Right. That would be because now you're really talking about the sustainability of their brand, of their marketing flywheel, of their customer service, their ability to generate more referrals, their ability to penetrate new marketplaces, to take on new innovation. Maybe they took on a lead pillar that, to get into the weeds with them, I think would just be fascinating to learn. I mean, I think I'm going to do it with my own clients. So yes, we should both do that. Then we'll share.
Excited to partner with you on the Real Trends 1,000, Tom. You stand for performance and excellence, and that's what we're recognizing in Real Trends. So check out the mansion section tomorrow. It's going to be there. But Tom, excited to see you in person this summer at Success Summit. It's only a few months away. You're going to bring the energy and put on a party far greater than teenage Tom ever could have imagined when you were charging $2 for a keg cup.
I love it. There's nothing I can say beyond that. Thank you.